Hello everyone, my name is Lacey, this is a bag of substrate, and you are watching Reptiles. Today, Lieutenant Dan is going into shed, so I don't really want to bother him because he's taking a nappy poo in his little hide while he works on, making new skin. And Sekhmet is somewhere hiding in this vast region of aspen shavings, and I just didn't want to bug her, If she's down to hang out, then she'll have her little head popped up and she's, easy to find, but I'm gonna let her chill in her little aspen cave house thing. But being as she's hiding in her aspen and Daniel is going into shed, I feel like today is a good day to talk about what kind of bedding you should have your snake on. 'Cause it matters! Yay! So there's lots of different substrates that you can use for your reptiles. It really kind of comes down to what kind of a reptile you have. If you have a reptile that lives in more of a humid, tropical kind of setting, you would have a certain type of substrate. If you have like a desert species or something that enjoys less humidity, you would choose a different substrate. It all comes down to what kind of an animal you have, what kind of a reptile you keep. As an example, Sekhmet has two different kinds of substrate, as we have mentioned in previous sand boa care videos. But Sekhmet, being a desert species, she needs more of a dry environment, low humidity, and so she needs a substrate that will remain dry. It won't really hold humidity, and easy for her to dig through since she's a burrowing species. So for Sekhmet, we have done walnut husks, ground up walnut husks, to simulate something kind of like sand. Now, she doesn't normally go on the sand all the time. Mostly at night, she's roaming around in the sand, exploring, because it's not great for hiding in, but it's something nice to kind of mimic what her natural environment would be. And then during the day, she's normally hanging out in her aspen shavings right here. Aspen is really dry, really fluffy. It's not gonna hold any moisture. As soon as any of it gets wet, I take it out because I don't want it to mold, because that's bad. You don't want mold in your enclosures. So for Sekhmet, she's got two different substrates. And then we come to Lieutenant Dan, and he is a species that requires a lot more humidity. So for Lieutenant Dan, for him, we use cocoa fibers. Now there's lots of different cocoa fibers you can do. You can do like the chunk fiber. You can do kind of these shredded cocoa fibers. For him, I like the shredded cocoa fiber because when he was younger, he actually used to burrow under his substrate, which was kind of cute. And for him, we just buy it by the bag. And cocoa fiber, cocoa husk, it's really good at not molding. It holds the humidity really well. What I do for Lieutenant Dan is I spray down his enclosure a couple times, once or twice a day. Let's give him a little rain. And when I do a complete enclosure, I make sure I really mix it really well so the substrate holds that humidity for a while. Another option you could do if you have a species that requires a really, really, really high humidity is you could do some sort of like jungle mix, which is like cocoa fiber and like some sort of soil that will really hold it. And that kind of a substrate would be good to have like bioactive. I do not do bioactive because where I live, I'm not allowed to have insects or invertebrates, which makes me kind of sad because it would be great to have a bioactive bedding or bioactive soil. That would be super cool, but that is not something I can do. Now, what I'm doing is I'm getting a new reptile friend in a couple weeks. Woo! If you know what it is, please don't share the secret, but I'm super excited to get her. But she's going to need a humid environment, so she's going to be getting cocoa husk. I'm super excited. Now, depending on what kind of a substrate you go with, you're going to want to make sure you have an appropriate amount of substrate. Something that is thick enough to where it's going to, have a nice, you can almost have like almost a terrain I like to have it deep enough to where I wonder if you can see in here without me unplugging my thing. Okay. For Lieutenant Dan, I like to have it deep enough where I can kind of dig a little burrow in his hide. So it's not just the space of his hide. He can kind of burrow down and be nice and snuggly. So you don't want it to be just like a tiny thin layer, because that's not gonna do much. That's not gonna provide much humidity or enough space for them to move the substrate around if they want. They can burrow. They can do all sorts of stuff. I have a little fake log that I set on top, and Lieutenant Dan has slowly kind of burrowed it out into more of a tunnel, which is pretty cool. And, Sekhmet, she has enough to where she can hide her whole body so she can feel safe. In the end, you really need to do your research on what kind of an animal you have. This is just a really good basic starting point. So aspen shavings for a drier species, cocoa husk for more of a humid species. And then, of course, you're going to want to make sure you have a hygrometer, something to keep track of your humidity, to make sure your levels are right, make sure you're doing water in the right places. If you need to do a humid hide that is having like sphagnum moss or something, that's something to make sure you look into as well. But basic starting is cocoa husk or aspen. Those two are very safe for your reptile. Be careful not to get anything like cedar or pine chips, anything like that, because that can be toxic to your reptile. So don't do that. Please don't do that. But yeah, that's a quick little substrate story for you. In 2 weeks, we have the NARBC show in St. Louis. So if you are going to that show, leave a comment, let me know. I'd love to hang out, love to meet you. It's a good time. St. Louis NARBC is always full of the coolest animals and the coolest people. So with that, that's all I have. So have a wonderful rest of your day. Have a wonderful week. And we'll see you next time, and never stop learning, because a mind is a terrible thing to waste. See ya!